James Evans was a congenital kleptomaniac with a notorious reputation for finding his way out of a cell. His history of successful breaks was so consistent that the prison staff simply called him Evans the Break. Following a wave of unrest in the maximum security wings up north, Evans was moved to Oxford Prison. Here, the governor was determined to break the streak, personally overseeing the prisoner's confinement to ensure Oxford wouldn't be the next name on Evans' list. Despite his record, Evans made a request that seemed harmless enough. He wanted to take an O-level exam in German. For months, he had been the sole student in a nightly class, working toward an academic qualification. The governor granted the request, but used it as an opportunity to turn the prison into an airtight cage. He initiated a series of protocols designed to monitor every second of the 3-hour test. This created a unique situation within the prison walls. To facilitate a formal examination, the governor had to grant a known escape artist something he rarely had: a scheduled block of time with an outside visitor, shielded by the very privacy required to take the test. The physical security was absolute. Evans was confined to a solitary cell, with a hidden microphone installed and wired directly to the governor's desk, so every word could be overheard. Guards Jackson and Stevens stripped the room of any possible tools. They took Evans' nail scissors and his nail file, though they allowed him to keep a battered bobble hat that he claimed brought him luck. Even the invigilator, Reverend McLeary, was subjected to a search before being allowed into the wing. The guards checked his suitcase and his pockets, finding nothing more suspicious than a case for his reading glasses. With the cell cleared of every sharp object and a microphone capturing every sound, the governor sat back in his office. As far as the staff was concerned, the environment was now a vacuum where no escape plan could possibly survive. The exam began in a silence so heavy the governor could hear the scratches of Evans' pen over the receiver. Outside the cell, Officer Stevens kept his eye fixed to the peephole, watching for the slightest deviation from routine. The only break in the silence was a correction slip, read aloud to Evans at the start of the test. It provided a set of specific numbers for Evans to enter onto his papers. This map shows what happens when those numbers, Index 313 and Center 271, are applied to a standard coordinate grid. They point directly to a specific spot in the town of Chipping Norton. For the next 2 hours, the microphone picked up nothing but the occasional administrative exchange. The governor remained at his desk, satisfied that his presence, even through a speaker, was enough to keep Evans in his seat. This reliance on the microphone illustrates why a heavily monitored environment is often the best place to hide a crime. When observers focus entirely on listening for a disturbance, they often stop looking for the subtler signs that the routine itself has been subverted. The exam ended at 11:30 a.m. without a single alarm being raised. Stevens escorted the Reverend McLeary to the main gates, watching him walk away into the morning air. Stevens returned to D-Wing for one final check, but when he looked through the peephole, he saw a sight that made him scream for help as he swung the door open. A man was slumped in Evans' chair, a grey regulation blanket falling from his shoulders. He was clutching his head, and blood was pooling rapidly across the desk, soaking into the German question paper. The victim, struggling to speak, pointed toward the gates and gasped out that he knew where Evans had gone. Believing the invigilator had been brutally attacked, the guards bypassed their usual checkout procedures to get the bleeding man into a car and off to the hospital. In the face of a visible, bleeding victim, the established rules for secure movement within the prison were set aside. The urgency of the injury replaced the lockdown, as the staff acted on the immediate need to help a man they believed was an innocent bystander. The man who walked out of the prison gates at the end of the exam was not Evans in a mask. It was an accomplice who had spent 2 hours impersonating the Reverend. Evans never left the cell. He was the man the guards found bleeding on the floor. Using a hidden stash of secret supplies, including a fake beard, a clerical collar, and a bladder of pig's blood, Evans had transformed himself into the injured Reverend right under the guards' noses. That bobble hat had been used to hide his own hair, which he had cropped short the night before to match the Reverend's appearance. Evans didn't need to pick a lock or climb a wall. His performance as a dying victim was so convincing that the prison staff physically carried him out the front doors themselves. The escape succeeded because Evans understood a fundamental trait of his captors. The guards saw exactly what they expected to see, a victim in need of help, rather than a prisoner in the middle of a getaway. The governor eventually realized he had been tricked and decoded the numbers from the correction slip. He followed those precise math coordinates straight to Chipping Norton, where he finally found Evans relaxing at the Golden Lion Hotel. Believing he had finally won the game, the governor arrested Evans in his room and led him down to a waiting prison van, handcuffed and surrounded by officers. Evans went quietly, climbing into the back of the secure vehicle as the governor watched it pull away, satisfied that the break was finally over. But as the van turned the corner, the driver looked back and smiled. The prison officer and the guards in the van were more of Evans' friends. They unlocked his handcuffs and drove him toward a waiting car. The story of James Evans serves as a reminder that security is more than just hardware. Thick stone walls and heavy iron bolts are only as effective as the people who manage them, and a mastermind doesn't need to break the locks if he can manipulate the person holding the keys.